Hey everyone, welcome to another Ask Me Anything. This is a space for advice, inspiration, mentorship, a sounding board, someone to still your wobbles, hopefully. Um, I was talking to another parent today and I just realized that, I'm at this point with all of these that we've done. I'm kind of building a library of answers to parents' questions. Obviously, my answers are not definitive answers, but they are answers nonetheless. Um, any new questions, let me know. Fill out the form. And yeah, my advice is not an offering, or I'm sorry, my advice is an offering. I'm not an expert. Keep what resonates, release what doesn't. Um, and then listen to all of these because I think they might help you out with your own circumstances, even if the subject matter isn't specifically your own. And they do help. One thing that I really like about it is that they help me see the broader view of what homeschooling and unschooling can look like or does look like. And the more that I learn about that, the more that I'm fulfilled because it's really something that I'm interested in. Feel free to invite anybody that may benefit from this. And as always, if you're looking for more one-on-one personalized problem solving and advice, feel free to reach out. Okay, so today, the I want to get into this one question. Well, this is the next question, but um, it is about autism and PDA and dyslexia and hating doing anything that feels like learning. It's a lot. Yeah, so let's get into it. I'll read the question. The question was posed once or was submitted once and then again with a lot more context. So again, I always love that. Thank you for doing that. So here is the new question. My 8.5-year-old ASD PDA, so again, autism spectrum disorder, pervasive demand avoidance, or pathological demand avoidance, or pervasive drive for autonomy child wants to learn but hates anything that feels like learning. He wants to learn to read but doesn't like putting it in effort to learn. He is quite possibly dyslexic and will need more support to learn, but he only wants to play. I worry if I don't do formal instruction that he will get very behind, but he also won't participate in formal learning. I know the studies say they can pick it up and not be behind as an older child, but I also would like those studies, but I also would like, I'm sorry, but I also would think those studies are based on neurotypical kids and not neurodiverse and dyslexic kids. We have been unschooling his whole life. He has been never been to school. He is very into building and designing things with wood, Lego, magnet tiles, building robots and electronics, mechano, any of those hands-on things. And he can follow picture instructions, no worries, and do all these things on his own. He also spends hours every day listening to audiobooks and read alouds. He also plays for a majority of his day, and I see the learning that is happening naturally, but he still doesn't know the alphabet, the letter sounds. After lots of play-based preschool type learning, nothing is sticking, and I'm starting to worry as obviously I believe learning to read is pivotal in life and not an area I'm willing to pass on. I know learning to read can naturally happen as kids are older, especially when unschooling. But how do I stop those feelings that I'm failing him because he doesn't even know letter sounds, especially as everyone around us similar ages can read. I also think homeschooling will have many more opportunities once he can read and do a lot more projects and research learning. Thank you. So yeah, nice, very deep question. And hey, welcome, Brianna. We're just going to jump into another question, and if you want to jump on after that, we can definitely talk. Okay, so in terms of this one, 8.5 years old, autism, PDA. Um, the parents worried that studies are based on neurotypical kids and not neurodiverse, dyslexic kids, so doesn't like the idea of just letting it go, letting the child find their way to reading. Still doesn't know the alphabet, letter sounds, and I think a lot of parents are on this same, yeah, or in the same mindset, starting to worry as obviously, I believe learning to read is pivotal in life and not an area I'm willing to pass on. Yeah, that's a lot. Thank you again for submitting this question. I think I want to start with knowing the background. I want to start with what was learning before? Why does your young person hate it? Um, and this might be a very straightforward answer, but I think it's helpful. Considering biological human behavior, again, just to ground us, it's very unnatural to hate learning. So hating learning in a specific way, or something that's imposed upon you. And then again, we're talking about PDA, kind of a top-down, um, yeah, like a demand, right? Obviously, that's going to make anytime we talk about educational activities or learning feel like it's a demand. And that is going to be something that they hate. However, I wonder anything that feels like learning. So it's like how is learning framed for this young person? Are you talking, is there a similar or the same kind of conversation about the building robots, electronics, magnetiles, Legos, about how much learning is happening? And if not, is that fair to your young person versus the learning that you more want to see happening? Including reading. Um, how was learning framed by school? That's one side of it. How has learning been framed at home? Um, yeah, just the demand avoidance and the academics, like that side of learning, makes it trickier to address this. There's a really good article that I'm going to share. It's called The New Core Four. And this was an article written by Kristen Himm. I'll share it in the chat um, as well as in the notes when I put this on YouTube. Um, I think this is really helpful in thinking about all the other kinds of learning. Look, I know I'm not skirting the issue of reading. I think that is a very important issue, but I also just want to say, don't forget about everything else that is happening because we often like to focus on the visible side of learning, and the very academic side of that as well. Because I can say that robotics is very visible, and robotics does feel like academic for sure, but maybe Magnetiles and Legos doesn't feel academic even though it's visible. And then there are academic type things that are not so visible, like the thoughts that are going on in our head when we're watching a YouTube video about the Civil War or something like that. What learning actually is happening there. But I also think a lot of learning is not visible and not clearly academic, and that creates a lot of concern for parents. So this article, The New Core 4, is super helpful in um, just doing a little bit of that questioning and a little bit of the reframing. Okay, again, I'm gonna get off my soapbox soon enough, I promise you, but play is learning. I don't agree with all things Peter Gray. But Free to Learn, his book Free to Learn, is a great resource here. Um, and I think you had said, let me just make sure here, that he wants to play. Like, yeah, okay, right. Like all he wants to do is play. Um, The thing about play is that if a child is playing, they're always learning. If a child gets bored, the learning slows or completely stops. Another great resource on this topic is The Book of Learning and Forgetting by Frank Smith. Amazing short book, really succinct, but I digress. Unschooling is also a spectrum, in my opinion. It's not one way to do it. It's not very specific. It's not, the doctor's orders, and it's not the opposite of what the doctor is ordering either. Um, it's a spectrum, and a spectrum sounds like a line, so it's maybe even more complex than that. It's like a matrix, if you will. Uh, so the question here, because I can't just guess what your goal is with your child, is what level of academics are expected in your home? How much? Oh, okay, so let's start there. I think this is important because again, I'm not saying you're not an unschooler if you say we have to do this level of academics. I'm okay with anybody that wants to identify as an unschooler, and I welcome everybody in. Um, I think it's important to know, and for your young people to know, what your expectations are. I strongly recommend. Questioning any of your expectations, question all of your expectations and make sure that they're defensible. Like, why am I holding this expectation? At the same time, um, I think it's important that your children, your young people have a say in like because they have expectations too, right? And can we find a middle ground that works for everybody? I know for a lot of parents that might just be getting into unschooling that sounds like oh, it's just all willy-nilly and let our kids do whatever. That's not what I'm saying because I think the child's voice is important and I think the parent's voice is important. And I think over time in unschooling, I'll just say this as a general rule that the parents will generally like as they start to see as they start to dip their toes into unschooling and they're still cautious, right? They're still flexible, they're still responsive. They start to see some of the wins, some of the gems along the way that they can more and more dip more into unschooling in different ways, right? So I think there is work for the parent to do, but I do not expect that to happen now or overnight, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I think they're what you're thinking right now because we do the best we can with what we know now. I think right now what the parent is feeling is very valid in the same way that what the child is feeling right now is very valid. Okay. Um, Another thing that was said in this question is he might get behind whom? And I'm not saying this with like a level of snark. I'm just noticing that there's comparison here. And to step back and think, well, are these my values that my child stays on grade level? And what does grade level mean? And how scientific is grade level? And what is the school curriculum based on? What research-based backing does the curriculum have? Okay, so comparison, what are we responsible for as parents is another kind of big question here in terms of being behind. And the deep down concern, I just want to kind of name this because I'm a parent too. The deep down concern is that maybe our child will miss necessary milestones. The damage will be irreversible, and your child will resent you, or your child will resent you for not making them learn reading in the future. And so those are all the ways that this could completely blow up in your face if you didn't do anything. I think those are important things to name and think about. But those are our fears, right? So let's not let our fears guide us only, right? So I said this a little bit of this before, but when your child plays, what is your child learning? I think there's a good Facebook group for this. What is my unschooler learning when? And again, I'll share this in the chat as well as in in the chat as well as in the notes of the description of the YouTube video. I think that's helpful because it helps parents, again, see a lot more of that invisible learning or just helping parents calibrate to understand like how all of these very schoolish subjects can actually fit a wider array of activities. Dyslexia. Let's jump into it. I think it's helpful to recognize some of the current strengths of dyslexia: creativity, big picture reasoning, problem solving. Um, and what are some of the ways that we can kind of help reading with dyslexia? Okay. Some simple things. I'm not going to say this is going to solve the problem 100% or if this is going to solve the problem for solve some of the problem for 100% of cases, but reading things like manga or comic books, graphic novels that have shorter sentences. Dogman is silly. Fly Guy is really simple. Bob Books, and there's even like an app for Bob Books. Super simple. The Bob Books are not as fun. They're pretty dry. They Yeah, they're like very low leveled readers. And again, we're talking about with if we are talking about a child with PDA, then these would be things kind of left out or read if the child is interested or if you offer it and it doesn't feel like a demand. Okay, so I'm recognizing the struggle there. Something based on interest, humor, obviously. Spend an hour or two at the juvenile section of the library. Maybe this is with your young person, maybe it's not, and maybe you're just picking up books that relate to what you know about your young person. Reading together, if you can. But I think in general with dyslexia, reading together, pointing to words left to right, playing rhyme games, making a personalized Dr. Seuss books. Uh, but and when I say like a Dr. Seuss book, like maybe like a rhyming book, and then maybe your child draws the pictures. Again, this is not going to work for every child. This one specifically might not work for a PDA child. Unless it's fun, unless it's like kind of like meaningful to them. The more authentic, the better. And try and have fun with it. And maybe honestly, this is something like I've said before, maybe it's something that this is something the parent does, and then the child jumps in later because they're interested, and maybe not. Maybe it falls flat. Um, Yeah. Oh, another good thing is like audiobooks with the physical book. And my son, who is a good reader, has done this. Even after having read like 300, 400 page books, it was just like, oh, this is interesting because someone's reading it and I get to go across the page. Um, Again, PDA, what this means is that your child is on board with all of this, including the book itself. Um, Yeah, so one thing that was said here was he doesn't like putting in the effort, which I just want to say makes him sound like he's lazy. I don't believe that's possible. Um, Laziness does not exist. I'm going to give you another resource here. It's an article by Devon Price, and it has shaped a lot of my thinking. Uh, and I think just to sum it up, laziness does not exist. It's just when we call people lazy, it's because there is something holding them back. There is a barrier. And to figure out what that barrier is is a lot more humanizing than just calling someone lazy. Um, and if we're talking about PDA, like that's a really good barrier. And Eliza Fricker talks about this really well. And she's not the first one, but she named a book, This Can't Not Won't. So what that means is that, because of nervous system activation, PDA, people with PDA can't do things. It's not that they won't or they're feeling lazy. It's that they can't do these things. Um, okay. Yeah, just figuring out what the unseen barriers are. If it's not PDA, if it's something else that's adding to this, or PDA plus something, I think that's important. So addressing PDA as well here, your last resort may seem to be more coercion or strictness, right? Like it's not happening, reading is not happening, so we need to, it needs to happen. And this will help the parent. Maybe. This will help the parent feel more comfortable. This will help the parent feel in control. This will help the parent uh, decide on the solution and set to work at doing it, right? Problem solved. Even if you're not, if the problem isn't solved, but at least you don't have to think about how to solve the problem anymore. You're just like, this is, the course of action. Coercion and strictness. But what is that going to feel like for a PDAer? And to name that there is internalized as well as externalized PDA. So externalized PDA looks a lot more like outburst or like loud protests, rebellion, fighting even, violence. And the internalized one looks like sometimes a very obedient young person, but they are beating the crap out of themselves on the inside sometimes. Neither is good. It's just that one is more visible, and it's good to recognize, kind of both of those. Um, yeah, especially if you're thinking about, okay, my child has PDA. Is it possible that, either of the parents in this family have PDA because sometimes it's externalized for one, internalized for another. And if we're taught to kind of hold everything in as a parent, we might not be doing so well and just to recognize that as well. Yeah, sorry, I digress again. Kristy Forbes had her most recent podcast, which now that I'm understanding it, um, I think it's the last one that she did, and it was maybe a couple years ago. But again, I'm going to put this in the chat. I think it's a letter. It's a letter from herself to herself, maybe to everybody, but it's about what PDA is like for her. And it was raw, it was vulnerable, and it was like, there were practical takeaways in there as well. And I learned a lot from it. So I think that's helpful to get a parent on the level to level with a PDA. And I think that's important if you're trying to accomplish anything. Um, yeah. And it might help you recalibrate the expectations. Okay, so that was that one. Nice deep one. Brianna, I see you're still here, and I know you have a question. Would you like to ask it?
I'm sorry, I stepped away for a second. Did you call on me?
I did. I was just saying. I recognize you're here. We just finished our last question. Do you wanna
I
ask
was
it?
listening in for most of it, and then I just stepped away
Okay.
for a second. Yeah, well, I think my question isn't as specific, and just even listening in has, it always helps me a lot to realize like other people have these questions too. And the question is always like, am I doing enough? And
Mm,
and I have other communities where they'll be like, oh yeah, of course you're doing enough with the, but I still, it's still in the back of my mind that I'm like, maybe I'm not. And so like the way that our days look, it's like, so she's 10 and she has decided she's ready to learn how to read.
mm,
And there's a part of me, I don't I don't worry anymore. I used to worry, kind of like somebody else here that you were reading the question for about reading, and I don't know how old that child was, but I used to get really nervous, and now I'm like, you know what, she's gonna learn on her own time. But there is a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that embarrassment factor of on my
Hmm.
own part
Hmm.
when she's interacting with other, like she goes to Girl Scouts, and all of those children are public school children, and so they're all reading very fluently, and it takes her time, and she has no embarrassment of it at all. But there's a part of
Yep.
me that's like,
This resonates. I just want to say that, but go ahead.
where it's like where I haven't done my job, like I'm
Yeah.
somehow not doing my job because she's not where everybody else is. So that definitely comes up a lot. But I know now she's really committed to, she's like, and she told me recently, she's like, Mom, one of the reasons I really am excited to learn how to read is because I want to read some like she's really into like fantasy fiction right now,
Okay.
and I want to be able to do that on my own, and that excites me, that it's for the internal, her reason and not my reason.
Yeah.
But but so like our days look kind of crazy. Like I have ADD. She does not, but she has OCD. And
Okay.
so like together with our like different types of neurodivergence, we just, it feels chaotic sometimes. Like I work from home, I run my own business, and I'm trying to like, like I really need to make more money. I'm just looking at our finances, and I need to contribute more. And so that's really on my mind. And it's like when I'm doing my work, I feel guilty that I'm not feeding
Hmm.
her curiosity. And when I'm with her feeding her curiosity, I love it. But I am always like on the back of my head, I'm like, I need to be doing more. I need to be doing the things that make me money. And so
Yeah.
there's pull constantly. And on days like today, like I realize like my ADD brain is like best focused in the morning. So that's the best time to do my business stuff. And so I'm starting out and I'm getting some of those things taken care of. But then a lot of times by the afternoon, like she's off working on some project of her own, and I can never, like, we just never meet to
Hmm.
sit down and do the things that she wants to learn about. And
Yeah.
so a lot of days it is just like she's just playing around on doing her stuff, and I'm like doing my stuff. And I'm just like, maybe I'm not doing enough. And so like that's my, I don't think there's a question as much as like, how do I know if I'm doing enough? Maybe that's the
No,
question.
again, that last part resonates too, because there are plenty of times where my son and I kind of diverge. It's like he did his thing for the day, and I did my thing for the day, and what am I doing as a parent, and what am I doing as a facilitator of his education? And this is a question that I've gotten before, like, um, is unschooling. Is unschooling just the lazy option? You know, and I think that might resonate a bit with you too. And but I
Yeah.
don't think it's true. At face value, you might be like, okay, yeah, I kind of see how people say that. But I don't think that's true either. Yeah, but thanks for sharing that because with your initial question of am I doing enough, there's a lot of like very simple like platitudes and ways that I could address this, but with more of the specifics, I think there's a lot more that I can add here. Um, one thing that you said, and I want you to be careful about your language, is that you feel like you never connect, right? So what you really mean is you feel like you're not connecting enough, right? That you're not
Well,
finding those overlapping moments where you're both doing something, you're being the facilitator, you're helping in a certain way, or just being present enough.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then one is take stock of what is being accomplished. Okay. And that doesn't mean I'm not talking about you as a parent. I'm talking about you as a parent in a family with a young person and, what is being accomplished right now, you know? And I think as parents, we put so much on our shoulders.
Mhm.
We got to make more money. We got to be more present, et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera.
yes.
We got to make sure that the education is happening, even though we're doing a completely new dynamic, or not new, but like, let's say unconventional dynamic, that maybe we haven't learned, or are not in any way used to, especially from our own childhood. That's a lot already. We're accomplishing so much already. And I think pausing to recognize that is like step one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Presence and connection. I said this resonated with me because it does. And anytime that I feel that I feel this wobble, this worry, like coming up, and I feel it like in the neck sometimes, I need to sit next to my son. I need to sit next to my son as he's playing Roblox and just be like, hey, what game are you playing? What's going on here? And then ask questions and be curious. And then and it's not so much that I'm like, okay, education is happening here. It's more of like, okay, I get what he's doing, right? And it grounds me in understanding what's going on. So I think it's not the more time that I can spend with my child, it's more about the times that I do spend with my child, and especially when I'm feeling a certain way, I want to be very curious and open and figuring out what's going on. I like to say that the times that I understand my son the most, I feel like I can see through his eyes. I don't know if everybody feels this or if it's just me, but I've always been close with my son. So I feel like at a certain point, I can be like, oh, this is what he's interested in, or this is the way that he wants to go, or that's why he's saying this. And when I don't feel that, I feel like I have to connect again.
Mm.
And that just means being present. I have ADHD too. So that doesn't mean I'm going to be sitting there for 30 minutes learning everything about what he does because I might be like, I got 10 other things on my mind that I'm really interested about or that are worrying me, or I do have to make more money, or et cetera, et cetera. I think those are all important parts of our lives. So, especially for someone with ADHD, it's like those pointed, very intentional moments. Um, and then another thing that you said, Brianna, the embarrassment. I think this is super important to think about.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, I mean, this happens. Yeah, I felt this. I've definitely felt this. I felt this at meetups when like random other kids are like, "Oh, you unschool? So how much is two plus two?" And I'm like, "What?" Like, that part was laughable, but like other parts are like it can feel embarrassing. Like when my son wasn't able to tie his shoes up until like 2, 3 years ago, and I'm like, oh my God, like what grade is he in?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then that happened, and now I don't care about it anymore. And I was like, oh, you know what? That was kind of this stupid phase. But the one question that pops up is, are we responsible for our young people? And like, of course, we're responsible for our young people, but how much, right? And how much does what we do translate to them as accomplishing things or like be growing up to being the human beings that they want to be. And I think the answer is a lot, but I think the answer is also not in the ways that we think. Like we don't have the effects that we think we do. We have a lot of the effects of modeling, and I don't mean like, oh, look, I'm eating healthy foods. That type of modeling, but more like, actually, I do like eating healthy foods. I talk about it all the time. We have a garden, and like that real authentic modeling rubs off a lot on our children. But how much does us pushing for certain things in their lives, um, how much does that work? And also maybe how much friction does that cause? And so it's doing the opposite of what we want. Because I think, in my view, my goal is to be connected with my child, with my
Mm.
young person forever, you know? And if I'm doing that right, then I can at least check that box. Um, And I think that's a really important check. Um,
Can I
and
kind of
yeah,
an example where is like when where it comes up is like she has all these interests and
uh-huh,
things. Like, right now she's she has an old phone and she likes putting movies together, and so that's like and then she likes editing them and like
uh-huh,
doing storyboards and making like her own graphic novels, and so she does that. But then she also has an interest in learning how to crochet, and
okay,
so she'll do these like crochet. She'll start doing it, and I feel like I could help, like if I sat down with her and learned it with her, like I could support this like thing that she's really
yep,
interested in better. But I've never done that yet because it feels hard for me. It feels hard for me to sit down and try to remember how to crochet or
yeah,
whatever. And then she'll have other ideas for other little entrepreneurial adventures, which I love to foster this entrepreneurial, like you
yeah,
can make anything, you can do anything you want. And she's like, Mom, I want to start making these little connection journals with like little journal prompts that she wants to make and then sell them. And she's asked that for a while, and I haven't gotten around to like supporting that
yeah.
initiative. So it's never happened, and now she's lost interest in that. Just like a lot of things that are her things that she wants to do that I just haven't had the time to sit down and and also I think it feels hard for me, and I don't know what that's about.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. It feels hard for you and you don't have the time, and that sounds like it's not your interest. Okay. So when we talk about unschoolers or self-directed education, we don't want to talk about just the learners. We want to talk about the family. So I see this in myself too. My son is super interested in trains and he wants to tell me all the things about trains. And like, I'm like, okay, if I got really interested too, then I could help him. Like, I can scaffold the next level for him. I can help him, get like reach even further. But that would be a crap ton of work for me to put in, especially as someone with ADHD, especially as someone that I think at this point, even though I'm a parent of an unschooler, I feel myself as an unschooler as well. I have my own interests, I have my own needs, I have my own responsibilities. So I think there's a moment, and it is really beautiful, that our young people become the expert in the family of something, and that is not only is that okay, but like I said, I think it's really beautiful. My son is the expert on trains. If he told me a train fact, or, we said, oh, which way is this train going? Or we actually really needed his help when we're, using some sort of mass transportation, I would 100% of the time say like, okay, I believe you. Like you know this stuff. That's really cool. And I'm so happy, that you're in our family that you can help us do these things. And I think the same is true for like crocheting or putting together, making movies and things like that. You don't have to always be at that next step helping them get there,
Mm.
right? What you can be doing now is you can be a partner, you can be a friend, you can be someone who listens about all their accomplishments, listens to all the things that are going wrong, and then problem solving, trying to problem solve and like, look, I am not the expert on crocheting. I did it a long time ago. And I know I hear what you're saying about this one, kind of stitch. It's getting tricky and you keep messing it up. I know that in my past, when I was messing up, it was because of X, Y, and Z. Would one of those maybe help you? Or also, I could look for a video if you think that would help you. You know, I've offered my help, and my help comes from a very particular place for my child who is an expert on some things. And
Mm.
it's the place of I have more lived experience and I might understand systems in a different way and I might have better uh front of the brain thinking where I can plan and regulate and things like that. So I can help, I can add all of those things, and I can also be there as a listener, and I can also be there as a cheerleader. And in what other ways that don't feel so much like teacher student can you be there for your young people, as two humans that love each other?
Okay. Yeah, that gives it a little different perspective, right? Because I just feel like I'm like I could really help her. Like if I if I learned how to do these things, I could kind of help be a guide for her. But maybe that's not my role. And I get jealous of like my husband. My husband works full time. He supports us and like financially, but I feel like she learns more from him. And then I start to feel like I'm doing a bad job. Like he has more book knowledge than me.
Hmm.
Like he did really well in school and like he graduated top of his class and that wasn't me at all. And I just have this like like she'll be like, "Oh yeah, I learned this fact," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, where'd you learn that from, Dad?" And
Hmm.
I'm like, and then all of a sudden I feel threatened by that. I'm like, I'm doing a bad job.
Oh,
I'm not teaching her anything.
yeah. Okay.
So,
So what you're talking about is academics
yeah,
versus, other forms of learning that are not only maybe equal to, but maybe sometimes more important than like the social aspect
mhm,
of, the time that you spend not necessarily right with your daughter, but, in your daughter's presence in the other room, how you transition to each other, how you transition away, the little inside jokes that you might have throughout the day. Those are pieces that she's taking away too, although they're not gonna show up on a test, they're not going to look great on a transcript. Those are super important pieces of life.
yeah,
And I want you to think about your role as not static, right? Because sometimes you will be the teacher, and sometimes your child will be the teacher for you.
yeah,
And sometimes it's not teacher versus student at all. It's friend to friend. I think those are super important to think about the dynamics of the family and how that flows through time with always, for me, kind of this goal of connection and partnership and not breaking that. I think our time's about to run out, but Brianna, I hope that was helpful for you, at least in the short
yeah.
run.
I
Yeah.
appreciate this so much. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I think I
thank you.
stuck a few questions in there, but thank you.
Yeah. All right. And for anybody else, we'll be running this again next week, always on Thursdays, and hope to see you. All right. See you all.
Mhm. Bye.